Welcome, Karim, Adit. Nice to see you again. We are into our second episode. We're going to talk a little bit about AI-driven startup and what happens with the culture. How does culture, how does humans, how do people, how do we create an organization where AI is embedded within the culture with everything that stands for? Biases, in human interactions, tech adoption, people wanting to develop something that might eventually replace them. There's so many things, egos, anxiety, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Latin America, the difference between the experience of two completely different regions of the world. All about how we were able to actually bring something that works, but without, not without the pain points that requires from leadership, guidance, direction, and how have we failed sometimes, and how do we succeeded as well. So, welcome in, Karim, and we'll start with you. How did we create an AI-driven culture since the beginning, and how we kept that going, and what were the ups and downs, and maybe if you have any critical stories within, happy to hear them out.
I have many. And I was thinking out while you were talking that taking like the learning from animals. My father works with horses. He's like an expert on horse racing and all that. And one day I remember I was a kid and I saw that there was one horse extremely stressed, and the way they solved that problem was to combine him with another animal in the same room. So, and that's still the best treatment for the stress of animals. It's like if you combine different animals and you push them to be in the same room and let them alone, they will figure it out. So the horse will not kill the other animal because it's a smaller, and the other animal will feel, the heat of the horse, and we will also get close to him, so he will feel this coziness and all that, and things are solved. So I'm thinking in diversity here. It's like, so in our team was the same. Like if you put a chef and a food scientist working with an engineer, the engineer will have to change the way he communicates, right? And will have to maybe open the freaking camera when they are chatting, and not like just, having this so-called conversation or just passing, equations or algorithms. It's like going back one step and trying to think how to explain these things, in such a way that is really understandable for other people, and that start changing the culture. You even remember the first engineers, how they were and how they evolved later. I mean, later you would see them later in a party dancing and having fun and drinking, and at the beginning was like maybe one screen, like a robot or something like that. So, and that's thanks to the diversity in the team, right?
Yeah. No, I do remember those episodes with some good outcomes and some very poor outcomes as well. But what you say about the horse anxiety treatment, I had never thought about it before, but it makes total sense. I think Notco is built upon like a museum of people, like a zoo of people. We really come from every part of the world with different cultures, with different domains of knowledge. We interact with each other, and sometimes we see the PhD and postdoc of second metabolites of plants talking to the engineers, talking to the marketers, so it's a pretty fantastic analogy that you say. I had never thought about that therapy treatment before, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and again, I think Notco was bred under the nuances of a technology company, But obviously, when we started to grow, there were more and more and more CPG kind of like oriented executioners. Like, I don't know if executioners is like really good executing people. Yeah. Executioner is another thing.
We're talking about farms and execution.
No, but how were we able to keep that culture growing as well? And what were the very hard parts as well, being, you guys on top of the AI team and engineers, How were you able to keep on going that kind of like culture, and was the culture at risk ever?
Yeah, I have a quick response to this. I think one of the hardest things was hiring really good AI talent, machine learning talent, into what externally just looks like a food company, right? If you don't know what we're trying to do, all the tech we're trying to build. And so I think, one thing that's very fundamental of attracting talent and then retaining talent from an AI perspective is trying to do something very ambitious. You can really attract, especially in San Francisco, very top minds to come if you kind of give them an open problem. That's what you're talking about in the first episode. Like, we have these huge problems. Can we systematically solve them? And we've always brought in talent from that mindset. Are they actually a good fit? Not just from like an engineering perspective or a software perspective, but are they motivated to solve this problem? And do they see the value that by solving the problem you can actually create? So I think that was very fundamental to building the tech side of the team.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, in many of the conversations when I went, would try to convince an engineer to come, I would tell, here your lines of codes will end up in a food that someone else is going to eat. And honestly, if whatever you're coding doesn't end up in a good food, it means that the code is wrong. And so here it's not about engineering, it's not about the correctness or soundness of your algorithm, it's about, is this thing really contributing to what we are trying to do? And there's a big gap there between the computer and the product. So this is making them go to the kitchen, go to the lab, and learning from them. Making and the best engineers today are the ones that know so much about food science and culinary techniques together with the AI and algorithms that they can now really unlock great solutions. So that's why today if we bring a machine learning engineer here, it needs to pass through this training and learnings. So it's amazing how they have learned to crack that code and to bridge that gap and bringing the technology to this entire context where there's a bunch of restrictions, a bunch of needs from users that is far from being learned from an AI paper, right? They need to figure it out right here.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, because I still remember at the early days that we were trying to actually force the utilization of technology to people that were very unused to utilizing technology, and least of all, using the technology knowing that it will fail, no? Because machine learning is about that as well, right? It's exploring this different domains and understanding where is the optimal solution. To get to the optimal solution, you need to fail. You need to guide an AI to understand what is good and what is bad as well. Mm-hmm. Even more, what is bad than what is good, no? So how did we solve for that? Again, I still remember those times where culturally we needed to force certain actions to the team and even build KPIs of adoption of technology. How did you do that, and how did you handle that when a food scientist said, hey, I'm not going to use the technology, it doesn't work, it makes me waste a ton of time? I think that, and obviously I know the answer because we are where we are, but how did you solve it at that point of time, and what do you think were critical decisions that you made in the right time in order to get to where we are? I think, just what are those 3 things that you think we did very well?
I think one of the things that early on, we're talking about having an ambitious problem. So yeah, we had a bunch of engineers working on all these crazy machine learning systems, but you're right, like it wasn't being communicated over to a food scientist or a chef who didn't know anything about machine learning or statistics, and we're just talking about probability. So there's this huge communication gap, not even just between English and Spanish. We're talking about like a technical communication gap. And we knew that was a problem, and I would say there's 2 main things that we did. One was Kareem was like, okay, we're gonna hire a food science group and a culinary group and embed it inside the AI group, just from an organizational perspective. And I recall, I think that was a really pivotal point in the company. You remember this?
Yeah, I remember.
And there was a lot of battle of where should it be under R&D? Why is it under AI? Isn't AI just technology? But we see this in other companies where the data science or AI organization is just all the way over here.
Yeah.
And then people creating value are over here, and they just never interact. And we had that problem, I think, very early on. So being able to hire from a tech or a product perspective users of the technology to be the guinea pigs, where their OKRs or KPIs weren't necessarily to deliver on the next Notco launch, but it was really to, hey, your job is to try this technology. If it fails, tell us. But we needed to show the proof of value, all the way from a food product in the kitchen to a perfume at a supplier's house. So we needed to show that proof of value. And then I would say the second thing there as well was UX. And I think Maka Zanyartu is here somewhere. We brought her in, and she's coming from a non-AI background. She's just about how do you create really great user experiences from a technical product. And she came in and she said, Adit, everything is wrong. Like your Giuseppe is completely unusable. Like how do you expect a chef to understand all these numbers on a screen? They know gastronomy, but they don't know probabilities. So we started focusing a lot very early on in not just in terms of impact of the technology, but how do we get UX as a sort of intermediate layer between communicating between the technical side as well as the culinary and food science side. So that UX layer in our Giuseppe platform, I think, has been key to drive adoption and thus drive impacts.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I was thinking that how many presets we have in our brains about the structures we should have in companies, and that's so wrong, because you might be a totally different company, and maybe you need to break all those structures to build the team you need. So it's very dangerous to think, we're gonna structure this way functionally because this is the way that everyone is doing these things. But maybe we don't need that. If we are coming up with a disruptive system that no one else developed before, obviously that we cannot have the same structures that other companies are using. Fortunately, we discovered that at some point, and we said, let's do this. We have chefs inside the team, let's have food scientists. And there was a lot of resistance. Yeah. Of course, why we can give you this service, but no, there are cultural things. We need them to feel you wear the same hat. They are part of the same team. And what would happen if there is one person, by the way, super excited about working in something totally different, creating food. Now I'm creating the technology with you guys. Now I'm part of the engineering team, but I'm a food scientist. And it's amazing how that transformed the amount of value that person is creating inside the company, right? It's like when we hire people, remember we used to hire people just to generate data. We would have food scientists generating data. And many people said, are you crazy? You are paying a full-time employee that could be creating new products, but you have this person measuring one ingredient, another ingredient, just doing that the entire day. Yeah, we knew that it was necessary to create a database in the next 4 to 5 years, and that was a bet. But was super crazy. Probably none other company did that before, right? So these ideas like making things totally differently from the way you create the teams and also from the tasks that you expect that people are doing. And regarding what Adit was saying about Maka, that's true. So she created these amazing social activities at the end, in the moment with a drink, after having a few beers, the person will really open up and say, I don't like this fucking thing. I don't like this part, and I'll put a red. And remember, she was putting these red dots, green dots in, and pictures of the system, and put a red dot where you don't like it. And no one will do that.
Everywhere. Everything was red in the first day. Yeah, I was like, okay,
second beer, I don't like this freaking thing, Yeah. Finally, we really got the honest feedback. No. And we could transform the system, right?
That was awesome. I think there was a breaking point in the two things that you guys mentioned. Putting the food science team internally in AI to understand, or basically building an artificial AI tool by food scientists. An AI food scientist tool made by food scientists and data scientists as well. I think that was really relevant, and how did you call it, the demo nights?
Usability nights.
Usability nights. No.
Yeah, it was because we were doing change management from a very old school perspective. I think the guy that we brought in was doing something called Six Sigma. And I was like, I'm pretty sure this was something that was abandoned in the 90s. But we brought this guy in, and it was very process oriented. Yeah. And the thing was, we had this very active AI technical strong talent team building AI, and we had a very great R&D team, launching great products in the very beginning. And then we were putting a lot of process in between, and that was just causing friction from the gears from turning. And I love when Maka came in and was like, hey, forget all the Six Sigma stuff. 2 beers and pizza and an afternoon, and everyone's going to open up, and then you have to be receptive, you have to empathize.
Yeah.
And I think that changed dramatically. How even I would say, even though AI and R&D within our company or organization are 2 different organizations with 2 different heads, it feels almost like, I mean, it is one just unity thing now that we have in the company. It's not 2 different organizations, at least from a culture perspective today.
That's interesting. I think there were risky moves that you guys made that really changed everything and landed where we are. I think it was, again, I remember those times. There were like very, very harsh conversations, and I think with inertia, we were making decisions that were not very good for the culture of the company. And I think it's also about, because coming back, we are a venture capital backed company. And obviously the investments generally go within the potential of capitalization of the value of this company, more than just the reality of the business right now. It's more about what it will come in 2 years or 3 years, and is this team able to capitalize that in the future? And sometimes we are forced to make decisions more based on the execution rather than kind of like what backs the fundamentals of the company. So you have 2 velocities, building value for long term and building short-term value. And sometimes you have this culture clash of how do you guide this company through, understanding that you have naturally kind of like an experiment. You can force an experiment, but there's a limit to it, and you risk a lot. So how do you handle the long-term and short-term kind of like guidances of the execution of the business? I put myself in your shoes, guys, and probably from 2020 to 2023, I believe it should have been like a very miserable place to work, and to navigate the team through. Just provoking you to understand or to guide us through a little bit, how do you handle the AI team when long-term, short-term, and mid-term are handled in a very different way internally in the company?
Yeah, well, short-term is easier to sell because you're supposed to deliver value immediately. But I believe that one of the aspects to sell the long-term is when you combine cultural, socials, and bring other things today as well. Even if you're developing something for the future, you can still bring things for the present. For example, do you remember the early days at Notcoin where we would have all the chefs giving samples to people and asking them the bites, and we used to be the entire team in the same place, so it was super easy. Everyone would love to try new things every day and create data. So then
only when they were good. I mean,
sometimes they were really bad.
Shit.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, those were the ones that still teach a lot to the system, but that was useless for the moment. Like, you're not gonna see any value of someone tagging a not sneaker or whatever in one day, but you knew that there was something there because first is cool. You have this cultural activity, you have people commenting, giving their feedback, and you know that maybe in 5 years that will become a database. So that initiative is a long-term initiative, but everyone was immediately sold on that, right? And today, that amazingly connected to one of the current system, which is the Concept Quan, and that is the way today we catalyze innovation by bringing, direct feedback data on the concepts that we are generating. But we didn't know that at the moment, right? So when you have maybe inspiration, clear vision, and you can bring today some value of something that is going to bring value in the future, things get connected later.
Yeah, I also think, we were talking about this earlier, but the execution focused nature of you specifically as a founder, getting on everyone's ass, and then just bringing impossible challenges to Notco consistently. I think despite there being, some friction, especially in the beginning, there was always a sort of common goal. Hey, we need to get this done in this time frame, otherwise we're going to lose a deal or lose something that's really material to the business. And I actually remember in that time frame, 2020 to 2023, you did something with Shake Shack where they're like, okay, we need to make this plant-based custard. That's what Shake Shack wants. And we have 3 weeks to make it. And everyone was like, what the hell, right? But that was a prime example of the AI technology. We had just built this new AI system called Synthesis. We're like, hey, now is the time to use this, because the ROI and the value of this was always that we could speed up product development on this product development challenge, because we only have 3 weeks to make it. There is literally no other option. So we had this environment of pace and culture that the teams had to start working together kind of from a top-down perspective in order to execute. And I love that example because we ended up getting the deal with Shake Shack with them, and we did the taste test. And it was a great success that sort of back propagated into both teams about, from the AI teams, like, oh, this technology has value that we thought. I think from the R&D side's like, oh yeah, we could use this for other things. We can see how this materializes to all the other products we want. But then like a further back propagation of R&D saying, hey, this tool is good, we solved it for Shake Shack, but wouldn't it be great if we could actually do this, this, and this? And so with this sort of pressure pain point of let's deliver for this one objective, you start cascading down a culture of collaboration, because the teams really need to get stuff to get things done. Yeah. And a lot of that goes back into people. Like, people can disagree, there can be egos, but as long as you have people in the organization that are, execution oriented, they want to get stuff done, you can make the impossible happen, I think. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to mention it's also good to bring some sort of urgency to the engineers. That smart people, usually they could be years trying to solve something and making it better and better. All these solutions are infinite, right? Yeah. So when you bring the urgency, you say, this is not like a research project, so whatever you are trying to do here, find a way to deliver value immediately, but at the same time, develop something that is sustainable over time. And engineers will figure that out. Yeah. We have great people, so they know how to do that. But if you tell them, you have 3 years to come with a solution, they will take the 3 years, right? They can take as much as they want, right? But but they also can manage this urgency, this sense of urgency, and think is smarter and coming maybe with a momentary solution that can give us something, but at the same time, paving the way to the long-term solution.
Yeah, I still remember an example, particularly with the food science team, and I was like, I can't believe the way we are calculating the shelf life of a product. No, basically, we're taking 6 months to create a product, but then we need to validate the shelf life of that product, and it's linear. Like, literally, if you want to test that your product has 6 months of shelf life, you need to spend 6 months waiting and understand if at the month 6, actually the product is good for consumption, more than just the microbiology, but more about like the, sensorial experience of the product. I was like, this cannot be. Like, and so, and the argument was like, you cannot rush science. I was like, yes, you can rush science. I don't know how, obviously, but I think you can. And I think that pressure for the scientist is a very good challenge, because they're so used to doing things in a way that is in a theoretical kind of like mindset, very lab, very research. But I think you kind of like need to, I don't know if it's a brainwash system, but you need to convince this guy that really you need to create a technological tool that will be able to actually say if that product at the end of the experimentation process is going to last 1 year, 2 years, or even 3 months. But I think I forced this into a guy that really told me, like, you're fucking crazy. Like, you cannot force science. And that's where I also understood that culture was going to be a strategic decision at Notco, and not necessarily like, only, okay, let's build culture of, blah, blah, blah. It's like literally the things that you can and can't need to be very evident, and overly communicated. Yeah. Do you think about any examples like this one internally that happen in?
I'm thinking that what you're saying, in the sense of, it's very important to tell engineers that no one really cares about how they did something or what they are doing from the tech perspective. We only care about the delivery of that. I remember once one person called me and he said, I'm selling a system, a software, and I believe that we have a unique algorithm behind, and I want to bring that, to highlight that, so I can have a competitive advantage in front of the potential customers. So I said, honestly, no one cares about the algorithm you have. No one is going to buy from you because you have a fancier algorithm. No one fucking cares. Really, like, if you are better because you are delivering better solutions, that's the only thing they care about. So I'm sorry to disappoint you. I mean, you will have to just patent your algorithm somewhere, but no one is going to give you $1 extra for that. And he told me, like, shit, like, no one told me that before. You really unlocked me. I was kind of like totally locked. I didn't know how to continue with this. It's disappointing, he said, but now I understand that I've been wasting time because finding the fancier math. So he was a mathematician. Shit. Mathematician. So the
Close enough.
close, yeah. So I understood why he wanted to highlight that. But then I think I changed a little bit his mindset.
Yeah.
So here's the same thing. Like, you can do whatever you want behind the scenes at the end if the algorithm delivers what we need you to deliver. And for that, sometimes you need to disconnect you from research, and that's hard for us because our education was mostly around research, right? So we want these sound approaches, and we want to show the approach, but here no one cares about you showing the approach. It's about you showing how your approach is delivering value, and that's very transformational as well.
I agree with that, and you meet people, through the course of your career in science and in AI and engineering that are more in love with their ideas than the outcomes.
Yeah.
And we had histories of this inside NotCo as well. But you can't demotivate people, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just be like, oh, your ideas, So we built a culture, I think, being venture backed, we still want to have ROI, where we say, okay, you have an idea, you have 3 weeks to prove that it's a good idea, or it's out, right? And that's like the expectation that a lot of the AI engineers have. There's all this new AI that's coming out every single week. The pace is insane. So of course you need to like go explore ideas. But really what we ask for some of the engineers that are working on the more core AI aspect of it is how fast can you validate that whatever thing you're in love with right now is going to add value to what Kareem just talked about, at the end of the day. And so there is this culture of, okay, I'm going to go after this idea. I'm going to prove, if it's my idea I'm bringing, then I have the sense of urgency to prove it because I want to work on it. And it's a very sort of assessment test. Like, okay, it didn't work. Let's move on to the next thing. There's a million other ideas out there. But if you have one person that's just so in love with this is the algorithm or this is the way it needs to be done, and they can't see the truth of what they're bringing, that person is never going to be a good culture fit because they're not adaptable and they're not seeing reality.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's very true. And I think one of the challenges, at least from a CEO perspective, has been cascading this culture within the other areas of the company as well. Like for the sales guy that sells not mayo in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, how is this relevant for him? No, they work in an AI-driven company, a tech-based company, but at the end of the day, they sell a plant-based mayo, right? So I think it's been very relevant to penetrate every area of the company in different ways, and the Giuseppe Bites is one of them, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could be a quality assurance, guy, in Santiago, and you would be tasting AI all the time. I think those things that are rituals and become traditions are really well embedded in culture as well. No, NotCo again, it's like a museum of people, right? And how wide it is in terms of how many things we stack up on as an organization can really make it difficult to have a unified culture. And every country could eventually have a different culture as well, and that was a struggle as well.
Yeah.
Even yourself going into Brazil that didn't have the Giuseppe Bites was a different culture than the Chile one, and the Chile from the New York one, and the New York from the Argentinian one. So how did the I don't know, maybe are we foreseeing to do more things in the Giuseppe Bite kind of like way to penetrate different aspects of the culture?
That's a good point. The other day, one guy from the sales team, he told me, I feel like working in any other team, like if it's not R&D or AI, it's not that cool at NotCo. It's like, yeah, if you're at NotCo in R&D and AI, it's super cool. But if you are in the sales team, marketing, maybe it's, well, not so much marketing, but maybe finance is kind of like
marketing is cool.
Yeah, it's true. it's like kind of working in finances or sales in other company. So he told me how we can change that. And Giuseppe Bytes are one of the things. And I believe that it's a hard challenge, but we need to work on that. There are ways to trespass this tech breathing thing in where you tell, are you really adopting, for example, the new AI technologies in your team? Because we at Notco, our culture is to do that, is to get the most of generative AI. So I'm pretty sure that in sales, in finance, in marketing, you can do that. And we've been doing that strongly in marketing, for example, right?
Yeah.
And you see the value of doing that.
Yeah.
So it is about trying to pass that mindset, showing them that there are big opportunities in changing the way they are operating today with AI technologies. And that would help a lot. And I'm pretty sure that in the future we might find new connections between Giuseppe and other areas like we did with marketing. If you ask ourselves 2 years ago, if there was a connection between Giuseppe and marketing, it wasn't so clear. You see now, right? So, but finances is related to the cost of the products, and we're getting there, right? Because today cost is an entire restriction on the way we develop and design products, right? So we're getting there. So I believe that we are in the right direction when it comes to, sparsing the technology in all the areas.
Yeah, I think Giuseppe Bytes, and sort of just taking a step back, is really the culture of experimentation. And I think the big difference between coming from a technology company and then a CPG company and just the cultural differences is how well you experiment, how well you fail and recover from failure. And so technology, we're always experimenting all the time with different AI systems. But yeah, I think we've seen this start being permeated across the entire organization, even to sales, right? So you can experiment much faster when you're in R&D, you can experiment much faster when you're technical, but we already started doing this with our sales and marketing. Can we experiment with the way that we communicate our technology, see what's converting faster? Can we bring this mindset of fast, rapid prototyping, experimentation, learning from the market, learning from other people, back into the entirety of the organization? So I think we're starting to see that creep through all aspects of Notco, not just within AI and R&D. So that's been cool to see.
That's good. That's an element that's pretty particular to Notco, I think. And I'm sure that sales is going to be very excited if we start, doing these interactive nights with them and see how AI can actually, be directly helpful with them. I think that would be another complete episode, having the VP of sales and you guys in a couple of years. But I just want to maybe finish off with again, kind of like doubling down on culture. And Karim, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I want you to take us through the episode of someone resigning the first day of his internship at Notco.
Cool, that's a good story.
I don't know if I know the story.
Yeah, so there was this student that he's really brilliant, so I wanted to recruit him. But he was not out of the university yet, so I really thought that his mind would really contribute to the company. So I was, working through a long period, having conversations with him and trying to bring him to the company. And finally, when he had to do his final internship, he accepted to do his internship at the company. So I brought him. Very brilliant guy, very strong technically, computer scientist. He actually knew other of the engineers in the team. So I sat with him and I told him, today, well, the core algorithm is the formula generation algorithm. And I feel like that we can really redo it. And this is what I did initially, but I don't like it. I said and now you are smarter, so you can come up with something out of the box that really is maybe better, more precise, generate more novel formulations. So I walked him through the algorithm, and then the team showed him, the system, the data sources, and I told him so he told me, so you want me to redo the algorithm to generate the formulas? I said, yes. Think about it. I said, come tomorrow and
take your time.
Take your time, and we can discuss tomorrow. I really trust that you are great and you are want to come out with an approach.
It was a pretty steep challenge, by the way, but okay.
Yeah, but
day one of the internship, rewrite the whole system.
He's a brilliant guy, so I wanted that from him. So yeah, next day he came and so he said, I don't want to do the internship. And I say, why? Because I feel like I'm not gonna really succeed on my internship. because I saw the algorithm, it's not so clear how to make another version. The data is kind of like all over the place. Yeah, you need to get more data from people that need to create the data that are chefs. Like, things are not set for success here, and I don't feel like I feel like I'm gonna fail. And he started, crying. I say, but this is just an internship. Look, it's just take 3 months. No one. I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't succeed, or if whatever you do is not really changing the game. It doesn't matter. I really want you to work through this, because I'm pretty sure that you are going to bring novel things to the technology. And no way, like, he stood up and left. And I said, like, fuck, it was just, I mean, I was really frustrated, because then I understood that it's not just talent what you need here, is being able to work in really environments that are totally out of control. I think, like, if you're a driver and you are a great driver, and then I tell you, yeah, drive with my kids behind you, you're dropping ice cream in your leg, and like screaming maybe he's not gonna be so
That's
happy.
a personal
with that.
reality.
Exactly.
No?
Yeah, right. So that's the thing. Like, yeah, there are scenarios in where you need that people to perform the best possible in the very controlled environment, but we're not a controlled environment.
Yeah.
And not code the environment is a very complex. It's a mess. And imagine before, it was a huge mess. I mean, and so yeah, it's not just about bringing brilliant people. Fortunately, we could bring later very brilliant people that was willing to work in this mess and get some sort of structure out of that. And it to me, it was great to see that evolution, right?
Yeah.
But
Is it because of the lack? Well, let's think that this happened in Latin America. Okay, is this a difference between Latin America and North America, where maybe in the U.S. data scientists are way more kind of like okay in working in cultures that surround anxiety challenges and stuff like that? I mean, both of you work with, Silicon Valley and Latin Americans data scientists. So is this, can we say there's a cultural difference in which you cannot treat the same, Latin Americans or is it like the induction of the culture needs to be different? What do you think happens there?
I think from a tech perspective, maybe in the past there were cultural differences between engineers and AI engineers in San Francisco versus Latin America. But I think that's been erased, and it's because of the internet, right? Everyone has this sort of monoculture now, especially in tech. But I think what you would see maybe even a decade ago was more of a startup mindset to approaching any problem in San Francisco, which is one of the reasons I think we ended up building an office here to begin with. Yeah, things are going to be messy when you're bootstrapping, when you're going from 0 to 1, you don't know what you're doing. And there's more tolerance for risk, I think.
Yeah.
But the engineers that we're hiring out of Latin America now, very young people, early 20s, first job out of school. NACO's the most interesting place to work in all of Latin America, I think, for these guys. But they come with the same mindset, which is really interesting to see over the last 5 years, where I haven't met really anyone that comes in, they realize, oh, things are messy. But the thing we always instill in people is like, you have the agency to make it actually systematic, right? There's just like this one thing, like you're a local entropy reversal machine. There's a bunch of chaos in the universe, and you have the ability to like turn chaos into something worthwhile. Yeah. And if you can give people that sort of agency, I think, and they're smart, I think they can do it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I'm very impressed of seeing how the team has evolved, because at the beginning, I saw clear differences, like between people from Chile and from Silicon Valley. Like, I saw that the way we were trained, like in particular, the education I got was very like in controlled environments. It was like, we are going to give you the problem, a hard problem that you figure it out. But what if no one is giving you the problem? Then I felt like we were not so well trained in that scenario. And the people from here, like when I recruited Adit and other engineers from here, they were better trained in figuring out the problem. So, but that was those years. Like now, it's not like that. I feel like now our engineers, we've been improving in the way we are recruiting, and the entire ecosystem there has been improving as well.
Yeah.
So now I'm
Exactly.
very impressed of seeing the talent we are getting from Chile,
Yeah.
which is exactly the same talent we can get here.
Yeah.
And they work in the same ways, and they are really ready to face those challenges. So I feel like in these last 5 to 6 years, there was a very fast evolution of the way
Yeah.
talent was trained there in
I mean,
Latin
you
America.
can see also. I mean, there was a revolution in the startup world in Latin America. We got closer and closer. Even I think at one point like 1-to-1, in terms of valuations that American companies were getting into versus Latin American. So and billions of dollars coming in the venture capital world to Latin America. So obviously, I think there was a leveling up of Latin America. I think again, Silicon Valley, I think, has a culture that is different. And I still remember one of the most critical things that we lack of at the very beginning was data. Right? And here's the difference between the story you told about this intern that resigned day 2 because of the lack of certainty. And I remember Adit showing us the first time the discovery module. And the discovery module doesn't really matter. It's basically an ingredient, centralized ingredient, kind of like data set with an incredible UX. And there was a lot of things we didn't know from the ingredients, right? Because you have a spec sheet, and that's the data that you have coming from suppliers. And there's, they are willing to give you some sense of what the product is that they're selling, but others, And I was like, oh, great. I mean, this is like a supply chain solution. Mm-hmm. And you were like, no, this is not a supply chain solution. This is basically the repository of the data that we need in order to formulate way better. It was like, where are you getting the data from? Literally, Adit said, we're creating it. I was like, what? Yeah, we're basically creating the data we don't have by assuming certain things. Now risking it, obviously. It's not particularly precise, but we are creating the data we need. And I was like, no, this cannot be. So you see, or you saw that difference. And I think that has cascaded a little bit to also, the rest of the team. And it's part of the culture of the company. I wanted to portray that example because I still remember when you said that you changed completely, even my mindset of like, holy shit, this guy is right. I mean, we can turn everything around by utilizing AI that maybe others will never use, or a logic or a mindset. I don't know, but again, I think those are the decisions that are technical decisions that at the end cascade to the kind of like fundamental culture of the company.
Yeah, you made me remember because after when we just launched Discovery, there was most of our food scientists were still working with the spec sheets coming from the suppliers.
Yeah,
and I remember that very moment in where we were checking one experiment and we asked the product developer why you didn't try this protein, and she said because the supplier said that this protein doesn't work in this food matrix. And I said, but the system is telling you to try it. No, but he told me that doesn't work. It's in the specification. And she skipped the experiment.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
Yeah.
And then fortunately we say no, like do
Try
it. Now
it.
we don't believe anymore that spec. We have more data now, and we can discover things that can be a contradiction with what you thought before.
Yeah.
And that's where the best learnings are coming, right?
The why not culture, man.
Yeah. And it worked, right? So there was a great moment to see that we were discovering things, and we started learning more about the ingredients than the same suppliers that were producing
Exactly.
them.
No, that's interesting. So anyway, I think we are over time. Thank you guys. Great episode as well. And we'll be talking more for sure.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.